Cool. It says it's live, and then we just need to wait. Cool. Okay. It is live.
Now we can see everyone.
Yeah. Yep. Everything is there. Everything's ready. So I guess over to you, Max, to start it.
Already? That's like 4 1 minute. What's the change?
Oh, we can wait a minute. Hi, everyone. All right. Yeah, Max, whenever you want to start it, feel free.
Okay. Hi, everyone. We are live, and it's awesome. It's our first community engineering hangout, and I just want to welcome everyone and say thank you. And it's good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or night, whenever you are. So we started community engineering team 1 year ago, and did different communication channels through forum, through dev blog, through Slack, definitely. But this year we decided to do something different, and decided let's do live. Why we try to put and do it always through some blogs? Let's meet online. Let's talk together. Let's share some news, and that's where we came up with this idea and kick off a new initiative called Hangouts. We're trying to do it in future more regularly, but don't judge us. It's first time. It's first try, and we hope it's going to be useful for all of us. I think that's it from me. It's just say hi, everyone. And right now, I'm going to pass to our host, David Manners, who's going to drive full session and talk about, everything what we want to share with you. David?
Yeah, cool. Thanks for the introduction, Max. And thanks, everyone, for joining. We have, I think it says at the moment, we have about 20 or so people watching, which is amazing for the first time. Yeah, and I hope you appreciate this meeting. I hope it's useful to you, and feel free to give us your feedback on it. Tell us what worked, tell us what didn't work, and feel free to get commenting in the live chat. We'll do our best to answer from the live chat questions when they come up. So the aim of this kind of hangout, as far as I'm concerned, is it's here to facilitate two-way communication between Magento and the community. So yeah, like I said, if we're not doing something well, let us know. Talk to us in chat, and we'll do our best. Give us a feedback, and also we will be getting community members involved. Today we have Alessandro with us, and later on he'll be giving us a kind of an update on the MSI project. So if you're a community member involved in a project or involved in certain pull requests or whatever it is, feel free to reach out to one of us, and we'll try and get you involved in this call in future. So this hangout is going to be split into 3 parts. Firstly, from our side, we'll give you an update, mostly about the last month, so that'll be January in this case, talking a bit about events, stats, and also giving you project updates. We'll also touch on a few things moving forward with regards to what you can expect in the up and coming months. Then we're going to have either a demo or a presentation on a given topic. Today we are joined by Tom Erskine, and he'll be sharing us some knowledge about the new testing framework, the new Magento testing framework. And then finally, we're going to open up for a question and answer session. So at the end, if you have any questions, drop them to the live stream. And like I said, we will do our best to answer them or find the right person. If we can't answer them, we'll find the right person to answer your questions. So I hope that is going well and hope that works for you. Yeah, so let's dive straight into that. So firstly, January. How did January look for us as a team and as a community? Well, looking at the main repository, we have the following stats for January. There were 191 processed pull requests in January. 115 of those were merged. We also had 203 created pull requests. And the merge rate, acceptance rate was 61% in January, which is good, but I think it can be a bit better. So we're going to try and roll out a few more things with regards to helping with acceptance and stuff, and we'll share that in the coming months. We had 88 unique contributors, of which 48 were new contributors for January, which is amazing. Part of what we're trying to do is we're trying to get people involved for the first time in contribution and getting them to stick around. So I love the fact that we got 48 new people involved. And our average response time was 19 hours from creation of pull request to first response from one of our team members, either core team or maintainers team. Personally, I'd like to see that a bit lower than 19, so we'll be working on that. An amazing, in January, an amazing 62 issues were fixed from the community. So that's, if you've given us a pull request and it was linked to an issue, we take that into account with that figure. And 11 were fixed by partners, which is cool. And I think we've all heard this 24, 25% of the code coming from the community stat. So what I'd like to do is give you a bit of an update. This is working on comparison of commits or amount of commits. And for January, we did a little bit better than 24, which is pretty cool to see. We are looking at 2.1 develop had a 30% contribution from the community. 2.2 develop had 46% contribution from the community, and 2.2 develop in January had a staggering 73% from the community, which is incredible, to be honest. Blown away by those numbers, which is cool. And that works out at an average across the 3 release branches at 52%, which again is pretty mind-blowing. You guys are doing really well when it comes to contributions, and yeah, we really appreciate that. To put those stats into context, that is, in January we had 50 more pull requests than in December, or 50 more created than in December, and that's 10 more new contributors than in November. So not only are we continually getting new contributors involved, we're actually increasing the amount of people who are new coming in, which is amazing. All of the stats are available on Magento.com. You can find it under magento.com/Magento contributors. Yeah, I want to highlight two little pull requests for January that kind of got me interested. I don't know if you know, but in GitHub you can react to pull requests, comments, and everything. So I decided to go and see what the 2 most reacted, I guess, or the 2 pull requests with the most reactions were. And the first one with the most thumbs up was to correctly set payment information when using PayPal. That was from, I'm going to mispronounce every name today probably. That was from Rickards from MageBits. Basically, this pull request was fixing the checkout agreements so that PayPal could access the checkout agreements on the PayPal side. And then the biggest amount of tadas, you know, the ta-da emoji, was actually from Anna Vocal, and that was the fixing of the jumping content in the admin section. So when you reloaded an admin page, if you had system notices, the page would continue to move around and it wouldn't be as smooth an experience. So that one was the biggest tadas. I know it sounds a little silly to kind of measure on emojis, but that's a pretty nice way of kind of gauging how much interaction comes from the community. So if you as a community like something, then just give it the thumbs up in GitHub, and we'll see that quite quickly, that, oh, this obviously means a lot to the community. And we've also started using emojis with commit messages. So forward porting, back porting have a special emoji, as well as merging into the main branch. So look out for those as well. So the top 5 individual contributors for January. I'm definitely going to mess up some names here. So in first place, we had Aki, and I'm not going to try and pronounce the second name. I'm very sorry. He created 25 pull requests, which is cool. That's a lot of pull requests. Then we had Danny with 18, Igor with 13, Alexander with 9, and Vinay with 7. So that's really cool. Those are the top 5. You can see those on the Magento.com page for contributors. Partners, we had Magento with 10, Vimo in 2nd place, Interactive 4 in 3rd place, HMO in 4th place, and Media CT in 5th place. Again, all that information is available on Magento.com. Yeah, so you can go in there, see what people are doing, seeing how people are interacting with giving us their pull requests and everything, which is pretty cool. And also a big shout out and a big thank you to our maintainers. Our maintainers help the core team because we can't do everything. You guys produce a lot of pull requests, so we need our maintainers to help us out. And for the month of January, the maintainers processed or helped to process 80 pull requests in January. So we really couldn't have been able to process as many pull requests without our maintainers. So massive thank you to all our maintainers. We also got a new maintainer, Yaroslav. I think that's how you pronounce it. I hope. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced anyone's name. He is joined our maintainers list, so you'll see him around. So say hi, and hopefully he'll start picking up pull requests just like everyone else. And another big change has been with our Slack. We now have 1,400 members of Slack. That's about 500 active a week, posting around 150 messages a week. So of course, if you need to communicate with people, Slack is a great way of doing it. You can reach out to any of the core team on Slack. There's also the project-specific channels. So if you're interested in a project, MSI or whatever, you can find the information there. The general channel was the busiest, and Cloud and MSI were the next busiest. So I think you can see that MSI has a real buzz around it at the moment, and Alessandra will be sharing some more insight into that later on. Now, a good piece of news from my point of view, it's not technically January, but the community engineering team now has a technical writer on board. So I won't be the only one producing bad English, I think, which is great. So Jay Hill has joined the team, focusing mostly on MSI and the projects. And if writing and documentation is your passion, feel free to reach out to Jay and see how you can help out getting involved with regards to documentation and writing, because that is just as important as our code contribution is our documentation contribution. So, and I'm sure he would very much appreciate the help. In January, we had 2 events. We had one at Magento India that was hosted by Magento. In this event, we had 22 pull requests created, and we spent a lot of time assisting people with their first pull request. So pretty much most of those 22 pull requests came from first-time contributors, which is amazing. And a big thank you to Miguel, our maintainer, who was there at the event and helped myself and Eugene out during that event. Without him, it would have been a lot harder. So really appreciate that, Miguel, and appreciate everyone who provided a pull request in Meet Magento India. The second event was hosted by MageCom in the Ukraine. This was an MSI-focused event, and we saw 6 MSI pull requests created over this event, which again is fantastic to see MSI progressing. Another thing to notice, we've had a few questions about backports and forward ports, and today we published a wiki article, which is available on the Magento 2 GitHub wiki page. This will kind of just explain the process of backporting, forward porting, how to do it, when to do it. So feel free to read that and let us know if there's anything we can do to help out with regards to backporting and forward porting. We know it can be a little bit complex when to do it, So hopefully that explanation will help you out. Cool. So that is kind of the stats updates, the events updates. And now we'll move on to the updating of the projects that are currently running. So at the moment, we have MSI, we have import-export, PHP 7.2, and bulk APIs, unless I am missing one. If I am, very sorry, but I'll try and remember it. For each of these projects, we have a dedicated Slack channel, and I'd recommend that to be the best starting place if you're interested in getting involved. And I'll give you a quick overview of each project and each project's process, and then I'll hand over to Alessandro to give us an MSI update. So the first one is import-export improvements. Now this one's mine. I love this one. This is our aim of this project, if you haven't heard already, is not to rework the import-export functionality, but instead to improve and provide bug fixes that will improve the usability and stability of the current import-export system. This will be as part of the 2.3 release. And we have Peter Capelli, Marcin, Federico, Adam Patterson, Andra, Umar, Navar, and Adres all involved. So far this month, we've completed 5 tasks. They're already merged in with 2.3 develop. We have another 1 that is currently in QA at the moment. We have 3 in code review, and then 2 more that are currently in development. And so hopefully over the next couple of weeks, you'll see a bit more progress. You'll see some more merging from the import-export into the main repository. We've also started up the PHP 7.2 compatibility project. Olga is heading that one up. And the main aim here is to get this involved into the 2.3 release with PHP 7.2. The focus is to work on the backwards incompatible changes, so they'll be ready for 2.3, and then and to cause as little disruption as possible with compatibility issues at that point. The biggest sections of work will be replacing MyCrypt and updating with the Zen Framework 1 systems. For MyCrypt, they're currently investigating the options. So if you have any ideas, if this is one of your passions, then feel free to join the 7.2 Slack channel and ask how you can get involved and how you can help out. As with Zen Framework 1, currently looking to clean it up and remove any unused libs from the Zen Framework 1, which is something I've been trying for a long time now, which is cool to see. Then the final one from me is the bulk APIs. This is being run by Eugene Toluca, and it has 4 aims. The goals are to implement support of asynchronous requests for the web API endpoints, to allow CRUD APIs to accept multiple entities at once, or multiple entities per request, to update and include status tracking for these so you can work out how far along you are with your operations, and also to improve the performance of key entities such as catalog, improve the performance of the API as we go along. Again, join in with Slack and you will be able to get more information, and reach out to Eugene and Olga if those 2 projects interest you, or reach out to me if import-export interests you. Yeah, and then the big one that I think everyone is looking forward to and everyone is really kind of helping out with and pushing forward is MSI. And for that, I would like to hand over to Alessandro to give us a bit of an update as to how the MSI system is coming along.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you to David and the whole community engineering team for giving me the opportunity to speak about MSI. And thank you to everyone attending. I think a brief introduction about MSI is due. Let me explain that it's, even if we call it MSI module, actually it's a bundle of modules that will be released along with Magento 2.3. That means in the very next months. The project is called multi-source inventory, but it will likely replace Magento's inventory module in future releases, because it can also be used in single source mode. And what's more, using it will be recommended since it brings a big performance improvements, and I will explain why later on. This performance improvement is mainly regards checkout and import-export functionality. After the release, MSI will become part of Magento Core, meaning that it will be directly supported by Magento Core team. But obviously, all the people involved with development will be very welcome to continuing contributing to it. Some major features of MSI, for example, the possibility to use it in single source mode or multi-source mode. So merchants that don't need to manage multi-sources for their product stocks can still use it. It gives the possibility to aggregate multiple sources into a single stock and binding a sales channel to a stock. For example, a website will be a sales channel. So a website, a Magento website can take products from multiple sources. The source selection algorithm and the stock quantity updates is deferred from the order placement to the order fulfillment phase. That brings the checkout performance improvement I was talking before, because thanks to the separation between reads and writes, we don't need to lock tables anymore. The multiple source selection algorithm it will be applied while fulfilling the order, so when the merchant processes the order. And the first release will come with a priority-based algorithm, and more will come, both from the community contribution and from Magento Core. And the extensions points of the MSI projects allow third-party vendors to add their own custom algorithms to select the sources. MSI project will deliver full drop shipment support within Magento, because now when it will be released, we will be able to define multiple sources corresponding to multiple drop shippers and enable back orders or limited quantities depending on the policy of the drop shippers. Finally, as I mentioned before, this improvement in performances is given by the fact that we introduce a new programming paradigm, which is called CQRS, that separates reads from writes. And another improvement is given by multidimensional indexing. I have no time, and this is not the place to explain the details, but you are welcome. You will be welcome to join the project if you are interested in knowing more about this. Let me finish with a big shout out to all the people that are giving their contribute to make all of this happen. David already mentioned the stats about the contribution. Let me recap the specific stats about MSI. In the last month, we had more than 30 pull requests merged and almost 10 new proposed. We had 60 issues solved and 60 issues created. So there is a lot of work on the project. And I'd like to say a special thank you to the people that contributed more in the last month. I will obviously not pronounce very well their names, sorry. And sorry if I forget someone. So thank you, Andriy Zabara, Lars Röting, Vadim Justus, Roman Glusko, Pablo Bitrinsky, Josh Carter, Bartek Simansky, Stefan Furman, Alexander Kozir, Stanislas Morodenko, Alex Litvinov, and the people from the Kharkiv Contribution Day that was in Ukraine some days ago. And obviously, big thank you also to the Magento Community Engineering team for their continuous support to the community. Last words, if you want to take part into the project, please drop a line to engcom, E-N-G-C-O-M, @magento.com. You will be warmly welcomed. The project repo will be, I think, David, that we can share this email address and the project repo URL on maybe on the YouTube comments.
Yeah, we can.
I take the chance to remind you that in April the 5th, we will have a contribution day with the engineering team in Milan. It will be dedicated to MSI mostly. It will be the day before Mage Titans Italy, and you obviously, if you can attend, you don't miss this precious opportunity. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Cool. Thank you very much, Alessandro. From a personal point of view, just if you haven't heard about MSI before, or if you're not entirely sure what it is, we will be looking to do a more in-depth demo or demonstration of MSI in a future live stream. So if you're interested in that, let us know and we can get that involved. But it's pretty cool stuff that's going on there. And it's amazing to see the progress that Magento, that we're taking with the community involved, and what will be provided coming up. Another thing that I find amazing is the new testing framework. And we are very lucky to be joined by Tom Erskine, as well as Sheila, who are heavily involved with the testing framework. And they're going to use this opportunity to share some more information with everyone in the chat. Just to note, if you have any questions, we will do question and answers at the end, and that counts for questions to do with anything. So it can be the testing framework, it can be MSI, it can be general pull requests and everything. So yeah, with that, I'd love to hand over to Tom, yeah, enjoy.
Okay, thanks, David. Okay, hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom. I'm leading development of our new Magento Functional Test Framework, or MFTF. This is a new framework that we're using for all functional testing. It's being used internally. Next version, Magento 2 development. We're pushing for automation in this framework, and obviously we want to push this out to the community, get you guys using it, get your contributions to it, get your use cases from it, so we can build it in a way that supports everyone involved in this community, within the company and with our larger community as well. So, I mean, hopefully at this point we released end of last year, so I'm hoping everyone's had a chance to at least be aware of it, if not, you know, take a dive into actually using it yet. For those of you who have, I wanted to take a little bit of time in this first Hangout to touch on some of the aspects of the framework around data use that can be a little more complicated, but very powerful in structuring your tests. So I want to sort of give that with some actionable examples, give you something that if you do use the framework, you can take it away and actually use something in a test. I was going to say tomorrow, but maybe Monday. And for those of you who don't yet use the framework or are considering it and haven't taken a dive in yet, this should be high level enough that it'll give you an idea of the capabilities that we're building out, so that maybe that piques your interest a little more than before. So this is me. And as I say, we are focusing on a couple of how-tos on using data that'll give you an idea just roughly of the direction we're going. And we'll talk about how you can get involved, how you can contribute, how you can help us try and address your use cases with this functional test framework. So first off, we can get into some questions about what is the actual development experience for a custom module developer, an extension developer. We've tried to make this as flat and simple as possible. We have an env file specifying some environment variables, and we've just included a custom module path. So for those of you who are sort of saying, well, how do I get this up and running? How do I use it with my module development? Custom module path will take any absolute path, and we'll just include the tests here right there as part of the larger framework. One constraint on that is that the module must follow the directory structure that we're laying out for all the test modules in MFTF. The modules are structured as Magento modules, and we have this test, page, section, data, metadata, action group. Your respective files go in there. It looks a little like this. You set custom module path in your env file, and then as long as your actual module looks like this with this directory structure. We'll pick up your tests from tests, your pages from pages, your data from data. It'll be intermixed, and not only will they run, that will be available to other tests. So standard regression tests we have, if there's further data that you write for your custom module, by using this mechanism, that'll be available to other tests. So that was just a very quick one because we've got that question in our community MFTF channel a couple of times. So I wanted to address that it should be pretty straightforward. Going then into data, as I promised. So there's a couple of ways we're using data. Essentially, for those, again, who aren't as familiar with the framework, data and everything in our framework, but data is defined as XML. The data definitions we're using for things like customers, products, everything else is based on the Magento entity, so they should be familiar. So the naive case of using the framework is we use this data, access the fields that we've defined to fill in fields in the UI. It's more useful often in many cases that you want to operate on known data. So I want to write a test that operates on a known customer and a known product in a known catalog against a known store. So all this data prerequisite setup, by writing these data entities as XML, we can actually just, in a before class of a test, just populate the database with what we need, and then most importantly, tear it down afterwards as well. So a couple of points about this. These are generally done in before and after blocks. They can be done directly in tests. We have these create data and delete data actions. We recommend they're usually done as before and after steps. The reason for that is if they are prerequisites for tests, a test won't run if the before fails. And we currently have it set up so that if your test fails due to some logic constraint or runtime exception, or whatever it is, the test fails to complete, we have mapped the after group into a field hook so that we still clean up data. This allows the test to be repeatable. If you run the test and then need to make a change to actually make it correctly runnable, you've still cleaned up your data. You're not going to run into conflicts with that. That's not possible. There are other mechanisms around uniqueness that we'll get into, but that's the essential crux of our before and after actions. We want you to use create data and delete data from your standard data entity XMLs, and that allows you to bring up your data prerequisites and tear them down afterwards. Basically, this looks like this in a test. Within the before action, you're specifying the entity. This create data entity is just a reference to a name in a data XML file, and then it'll have all of the fields of that data entity available to it. When it's in a create data step, we have a mapping, which we won't go into in depth here, but it's mapped by our metadata structures. This allows this XML entity to populate the correct API call to go and create, in this case, a subcategory in a product. You can also see in the second create data call here, the simple product, it has a required entity of simple category. So you do have that relationship between data entities and entities that they require. And everything has a step key. So important to note there, when we're doing the delete, when we're actually cleaning this data up, what we're referencing is, and with the delete data action, we have a create data key equals, and that references the step key of the create data step that created that data. When we're referencing something else in test, we're always using that step key. It's our unique identifier for that step. So you don't need to know about the return IDs. You don't need to know anything specific to that. You just simply need to know this is what I called it step key. Now I can call a delete on it. So that's a simple example of how we use that. So creating the data is great, and then operating on it in the UI is great. But a lot of times we can create data and then we want to actually use some of the data that's then persisted. The most common case in this will be an ID. When we create the data through that API mechanism as a data prerequisite for a test, well, sometimes we want to return the ID because, for example, that's shown in the URL and we want to assert that we're looking at the correct product. So there's a dev docs page that goes into more depth on exactly how this works and the syntax. But essentially, if you can see the first bullet here, we use the $$ entity.attribute syntax. That's referencing data in a before. You can contrast that with a single dollar reference, that's for data created in a test body itself. So the dollar notation is for referencing this attribute of a data entity from a separate XML file, and the $$ is used when that was done in a before outside of the test scope. So all of the data entity, the information will be available as normal. So you can call anything by entity attribute. And any return values from the API call, the most common one is ID, will also be saved and available to you in the test. The specification of exactly what's returned and therefore what will be available, we recommend checking against the Swagger, so you have the latest version of what's returned from the API. This looks a little like this. So in this, we create this entity default category with a step key of create prerequisite category. And you can see actually within the test here, this am on page, it's taking the URL from the page object, storefront category page.url, and it's also taking the create prereq category .name. So it's taking the return value of that created category and using it as part of an assert on that am on page action. And this is, if you don't know our Swagger, it's a DevDoc Swagger, and it'll list all the API calls available and all the returns so you know what is available for you to use in test. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, usually cleaning up data is our preferred course of action. We want to create data available for test and we want to clean it up. That keeps test item potent. It makes them repeatable so we don't run into conflicts. It also makes tests, it reduces test pollution so we don't accidentally operate on data that we didn't want to be there. We want to keep each test individual, runnable on its own, and not relying on any test to run before or after. We don't want any sequencing of tests. Where it's not possible to use that before and after to create things, we also have the ability to, when we create data, to provide uniqueness to it. So we can provide that uniqueness either as a prefix value or a suffix value to an attribute of a data entity. And that prevents the conflict. So you can see in the example here on screen, this simple subcategory, the name, we want to be unique always to prevent that conflict if we rerun this test multiple times. So here we're doing a unique suffix, and that's going to append a unique sequenced value to the end of the name. And when you do that, that name with the suffix is returned. So when you reference the variable, the entity.name, it has the full name with the suffix. So referencing it in your test is as normal. It will have a suffix that you don't necessarily know what is, but it will, relate to what's used in test and what's used in URLs. So that should prevent or allow tests to be a lot more repeatable and reusable. So continuing on with data. So that's data that you can use from your own data entities that you create and populate an API with. But often you'll want to use data that's available on the page. So when you're stepping through a functional test, like we said, you may create something in a before action that populates the database through the API that creates an ID that's returned to you. But you'll want to also take the ID, for example, from the URL and then assert that the ID in the URL is the same as the ID that you actually created. You're actually operating on the correct entity and that's correctly returned, say, in a search or in a history. So we have these grab actions. And anything that's a grab action starts with the word grab. What that does is it takes some piece of information from the test or from the page in question and then stores that as a variable that you can reference in the test. So the way that works is this grab action. So we see here in the first example on this page, the grab value from, the selector is what we're grabbing from. Then like everything else, like every action in a test, we give it this step key, this unique identifier. So what that automatically does behind the scenes is the grab value from grabs the value and then creates a new variable. The variable name is the step key name. So when I want to actually use that, we'll see here, we're going to fill field with that user input, the variable that we grabbed from this grab value action previously. So we now want to use this. So we fill field, we set the selector where we actually want to fill that field to. But the user input here in the second example is in this notation, in this brace $grab step key. And you'll see that is the step key. That's the variable name we're referencing. And that's the dollar notation again. So we see step key from grab action is how we use that. That'll work for any of the grab actions that are available. You can see it in use here where we've grabbed an order number from our checkout success main section. We've grabbed the text there. So that is a grab order number variable with the value, whatever this has grabbed the text, the order number in this case. And then we'll go ahead and a fill field for the order grid section search to, then search and see if that exists and assert on it. We'll then just reference grab order number here, and that's going to populate whatever this took from this variable. So that should allow tests to be a lot more flexible in terms of where you don't know what return data is, where you want to test out, order numbers that are generated that you can't possibly know in advance, things like that. This allows you just to pass them through with that step key. This also should highlight why step keys are so important. They are unique identifiers, but the more descriptive and clear you make them, it's going to make it a lot more obvious in your test what you're actually filling. If you make this step key A1, then your user input is $A1, which is not very clear. For readability, maintainability, if you're contributing tests into us, the more clear you make this, the more clear the test is, the less headaches you're going to have trying to maintain this as you go forward. Okay, we have a lot of grab actions that are available. There's in all variable methods tests. So we have a sample test module that's available with MFTF. One of the modules is just sample test that lists all of the possible available actions. This particular one, all variable methods tests, is one that either uses or generates a variable. So you can reference that in the sample test module. Anything starting with grab is what we expect to return a variable in that way. So that's a quick look at some of our data uses. I didn't want to go into too much depth with any of these. That might be for a future webinar. We are running a webinar in the near future that we'll be giving information on. We'll be going into a deep dive of some more topics on this. But this is probably the most important slide I have for you today. Hopefully, we've given you some information that you'll be able to either use, or we'll have sort of demonstrated to you that we're, developing features that'll make your lives easier when you want to functionally test. But get involved with us is going to be the takeaway from this. We are building backlogs, we're building features out, we're going to be doing minor and major releases throughout the year. And we want your contributions and we want your feedback on how this is operating and what we can do to help drive this along for you. We've got this MFTF Slack channel. So the whole development team is active in there. We're already taking people in and stepping them through use cases. We're filling out our backlog from that. We're also helping people day to day in just how to actually use the framework. And that kind of information will filter back into dev docs. But this is a great first point of call to get involved with us. We have our GitHub project. So we'd be expecting, everyone to, if you find an issue, raise a GitHub project issue with us. We can track that. We can respond to it. We can make sure that bugs or deficiencies in the framework get fixed and get delivered to you as soon as we can, so that, again, you can continue writing tests and increase your test coverage without a lot of friction. In terms of those releases, MFTF is not going to be tied directly to Magento releases as such. We are going to hold our own semantic versioning. We do expect to have regular minor releases, so non-breaking additive features we expect to roll out relatively frequently. There will be major releases that obviously then, following semantic versioning, have potential breaking changes. We want to make those more infrequent. We don't want a lot of refactor work for you, and we expect to communicate that, feedback on that as we approach that process of any potential breaking changes. And based on feedback, as we build a backlog, as we communicate with you in the Slack channel, we can look at making up for grabs items. If there's a real interest in developing this with us, and we'd love it if there is, and we'd love your contributions, we can start looking at, an up for grabs board where we put out items that we think the community might make a real contribution to. So that was a brief look at data in MFTF. Pretty brief, but hope everyone took away something from it. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much, Tom. I appreciate you taking the time and showing some stuff that people can kind of get used to, and also really important showing where people can communicate with you and your team as well.
Yeah, and I just want to add, all this awesome project which community develop right now, including MSI, ImportX, and everything, with recent release of MFTF right now, I would say, gonna be asked or require have functional test coverage or functionality we develop together. And since it's new framework, we have this team, Tom and his by this MFTF channel to help with. We just want to get as much as possible feedback and all of you most likely working with some merchants and trying to to do automation deployment. That's where this framework should help, and we want to get your feedback. We want to improve it. We want everyone to use, and not only use, but also contribute onto this framework, improve it. That's the reason it's open. And again, Slack channel, community engineer Slack channel, MFTF. If you're interested, join, ask questions. Guys, very responsive, and we're really looking forward, for wide adoption. And as Jason Korshin, our director of marketplace, mentioned, later this year, if you create extension and you have MFTF test bundled, it's going to be like Express Lane. You're going to have faster review because it's going to be automated, and we're going to give a credit to you for doing such. Yeah, that's awesome. David?
Oh, yeah, that's good. Now it is time. Oh, someone's already answered, Anna. Now it's time for the question and answers. So in this call, we have myself, we have Alessandro, Anton, Krill is in, Max, Alexi, Olga's here, and Tom is here. So if there is anything you'd like to know about community engineering, any tough questions for Anton, some MSI questions for Alessandro, or anything you've just seen from Tom, feel free this is the time, so you can ask your questions in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them. We've already answered one, so that was from Anna. She asked where you could follow Tom on Twitter, and his handle is apparently @TomMagento. So you can go follow him and tweet about how great the MFTF stuff is. I think it's also super important to highlight you can talk to us, you can communicate with us through Slack, finding the right channel. So there's one for MFTF, there's one for MSI, there's import-export, PHP 7.2, bulk APIs, pretty much anything you want to know about community engineering, about Magento. Probably the best go-to is the Slack. Yeah. So now we just need some questions to come in. I actually have a question for Tom. So what do you think is probably the hardest thing involved when dealing with writing MFTF tests? Sorry for the tough question.
Right now, it's ecosystem, I think. We can develop tests right now that cover a lot of use cases, but as we sort of push out to merchants, to extension development, to make this a holistic solution that isn't just defined by core development only and applies to everyone and is usable by everyone and becomes, a single functional point, which really sells the value of functional testing, is the biggest challenge for us right now. And that means we need use cases, we need problems. It's about the first time in my career that I'm ever going to encourage people to send me as many problems and bugs as I can get. The more I get, the better I have a scope of what the ecosystem is, and the better we can make sure we're solving the problems in the short and medium term that allow people to adopt this and have confidence in using it. So please send me your problems for now. Yeah.
MFTF problems, that is, just to clarify.
I'm open.
Cool. So, okay, Alessandro, MSI, for you, what do you think is the most exciting part of the MSI project? Why should someone get involved in the MSI project if they haven't as yet?
One of the things that I like most is the fact that by working on MSI, we are anticipating some of the architectural patterns that will be part of Magento future releases. I mentioned before the CQRS, but we also had the possibility to use domain-driven design patterns, and we developed we used a lot of patterns, design patterns, new design patterns. So working on MSI is a way of seeing how Magento will be in the future release. So it's really engaging. It's a great learning opportunity. That's why I like the project so much.
Cool. And you've been involved with it from from the beginning or from slightly later on from the beginning?
Slightly later on. The project started on May in last year, and I joined on July. And I'm still involved in development, but and to be honest, not that much, because a lot of people joined the project, so I had the space to focus also on other things. Like, for example, we are also working on the testing part of the project. So, for example, together with other people from Magento, we are looking at how to define the behaviors of the module through using, for example, the Gherkin language. So we are defining all the behaviors to perform quality assurance tests. And probably in the very next future, we will also be able to automate those tests thanks to the new framework that Tom showed us. So it's really working on MSI. It's really a way of looking at several aspects of working with the Magento framework.
Cool, that's great. And the toughest question: when's it going to be ready? Come on, let's put you under pressure.
Okay, we'll be ready. Well, the first release is will be deployed with Magento 2.3. So the next question I expect is when Magento 2.3 will be released. I'm allowed to say this year, in the very next months. Probably Max will be more specific. It will be a first release because, as I mentioned before, the model will be improved more and more. So it can be considered, the first release can be considered an MVP, a minimum viable product to test the main functionality. And we will have improvements over time. New algorithms for source selection will be developed. And that's it. I don't know if Max wants to add something about timing.
So timing, it depends of community, because the tricky part, we right now, or Magento itself, we're not dictate how soon or how fast it's going to develop. Everything depends on how community developers spend their time, how they contribute, and how many people join, right? So as soon as, if tomorrow we're going to join 100 people, we're going to finish it within a week, we're going to release in 2 weeks, right? So we cannot, so I don't have such prediction, but so far it's going very well. And the last statistics shows for MVP, we already covered about 80% of the code base. So we have to develop a little bit more. And best part right now, we're talking about releasing multi-source inventory as independent module base. So we're working on preparing code to be independently released from major versions of Magento, which will give us much more flexibility. We will be able to do patches, as soon as we want to. And again, it's not on us. I mean Magento. It's on community. How community interested, how soon community interested to join. And we have like pretty good group of developers, including Alessandro and other guys doing this stuff. There is more people interested in joining, and I have like a few email in my box asking, the same actually question, when it's going to be ready. But also some companies interested to participate and try out what it is. So it's pretty successful project, and yeah, as soon as we're gonna do it, we're gonna publish it, no doubt. And I hope, and I'm sure it's gonna be this year. Particular time, it's hard to say. Yeah.
Just I want to add just another thing. At the beginning, the multi-source inventory modules will coexist with the default inventory module by Magento to give vendors time to adapt to it. But we, in the future, we aim at replacing the inventory module just because it gives some improvements about performance, as I mentioned before. So it will, our hope is that it will completely replace the inventory module. So it is not only intended to be used for merchants that have multiple sources, but also for merchants that have only one source for their products. Thank you.
Cool. Nice. Thanks, man. So we have one question in the chat from Roman, and basically it's saying that, guys, are you going to develop any other modules among the Magento community besides MSI? Doing very well with MSI, and I think it's a good starting point for doing this in the future. The short answer is yes. We're doing it currently at the moment with regards to the bulk API, plus we also have more kind of bug fixing and refactoring with regards to PHP 7.2 compatibility and the import and export stuff. With regards to bigger projects, or let's say what comes next, that is really driven by the community. So if there is anything that you feel is needed, if you feel there's anything that is missing, then feel free to talk to us on Slack or email us at engcom@magento.com. And we will do our best to plan with you guys, with the community, the steps forward with regards to the projects.
There is question, and it's simple. I mean, I hope everyone knows, but the question is how to join community engineering Slack channel, and it's pretty easy. So it's open for reference. So if somebody or your friend or buddy in this channel already, they can send you invite directly. So we're not restrict. So we're not like we're not bottleneck on invitation. If there is nobody who in Slack channel, just send email to engcom@magento.com, and we're gonna be happy to add you in this 1,400-ish developer worldwide. So you can you can easily. We're open for everyone anyway.
Cool. Yeah, one other question. Will you be highlighting companies who participate with developing in the MSI? Mentioned with regards to release notes, example. Yes, there is a partner program as well as generically with companies and also individuals getting involved. Partner program, if you're a partner, reach out to us and we'll get you set up with the partner system. Email again, probably the best option, engcom@magento.com. And with regards to release notes, we've already started doing that with our current pull requests that come in. So anyone providing pull requests will get mentions in release notes. And I'm fairly sure that will continue with MSI and any other projects, any other pull requests. Anton, since you're here, I've got a question for you. He is here, right? You can hear us, you can speak.
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yes, we can hear you, man. With MFTF and MSI kind of being developed as more external or external from the kind of core modules, or they'll be separated, is there a plan, or will there be a plan in the future to continue on this way of kind of extracting modules, similar to how Symfony is working, or will there always be a relatively big Magento core? Makes sense?
Okay. this question sounds like if it was prepared by us. So it's a very good question. Thank you for asking it. And we are actually, now we are doing a lot of discussion. We have a lot of discussions about this. And yes, that's basically the plan that we have for today, for moving forward. We want to release all of the new features that are isolated, same as like MSI. We want to make them independently releasable and isolated from core behavior, because there is lots of benefits of doing this, both for SIs, extension developers, and for Magento internally, because it will allow us to do shorter release cycles, and it's beneficial from all perspectives. And the ability to build Magento in such a modular way, it helps us to design applications, to design Magento, release Magento, and helps extension SIs to build linear applications. So yes, we plan to do it for future modules. To summarize, new behavior will be released in a related manner, and we are also discussing plans to extract and decompose some of the big monolithic modules and make them more isolated. As Alessandro mentioned, MSI is not just great because it's multi-source support. It's also great because we are effectively extracting inventory behavior from catalog module. This is something that we have been talking about for years now, and now with the help of community, we've been able to do that.
Cool. Thank you very much. It was a Magento prepared question because I prepared the question, so I think it counts, right? Cool. We have two more questions that are coming. Firstly, and I'm honest here, I don't know the answer to this, so if anyone does that's in the chat, please help me out here. And it's basically what is the future with React JS with the next release, and how will it affect SEO and similar stuff with stores? Does anyone have? Would anyone like to take that question?
Okay, I can do that. Okay, so question, if I heard it correctly, what's the future with React JS? What are the plans for React JS? So today our front-end research team led by James Zetland is working actively on PWA Studio and reference theme for Magento. So around 2 to 3 release, we plan to, so during next month, we plan to publish this project, right? And we want to get as much contribution from community as possible in this project. So we will be opening up our plans, what we have for today, and our backlog for this project. There will be a lot more communication on this project happening this month. For current planned release is somewhere around 2.3, but again, it's a PWA Studio. It's an independent, isolated project, so it can be released a bit earlier, a bit later, depending on how much involvement we get from community, as Max mentioned, for MSI. So yes, the plan is to have this PWA application using React, Redux for state management. First release will be PWA Studio and reference theme, and around 2.4 we plan to release fully functional PWA theme based on React. It will effectively move all of the presentation logic, UI logic from server to browser, and this PWA application, browser application, will talk to Magento storefront, to Magento server using our storefront new GraphQL API built specifically for storefront application. This new GraphQL API is also in development right now by one of our core teams. So basically, we have a lot of things worked for storefront in progress for storefront application.
Cool. Thanks. Again, with everything else, the PWA stuff, there is a channel in the Slack group. So if you're very interested, feel free to join in there with that. And we will also be looking to get a presentation based on PWA in one of the up-and-coming Hangouts from the team. So yes, that will be basically more information coming on that. There is another question from, also, I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, I'm sorry, go into Slack and keep asking the questions. Oscar has asked the question, are you planning on making short video tutorials for the best practices for Magento 2 or something similar? With regards to contributions, I am planning on doing some more videos, short videos on best practices and how-tos with contributions. I'm currently talking with the the team that control the training side of stuff in Magento. So I'm going to try and get those pushed forward and make them as best as possible. With regards to best practices in Magento 2, I know that there is stuff being worked on with regards to the Magento U and getting that pushed forward. Yeah. Another question coming in. Community engineering, will the Hangouts be regular? Firstly, thanks for the feedback. They're saying it looks great. I hope, yes. Regularity, at the moment, roughly speaking, probably once a month, I believe, unless Max tells me to do it more often. I think that's a pretty good regularity. Yeah, so I think once a month with a plan to talk about PWA or MSI or something else, just like Tom has done today with regards to the testing framework. Yeah, I hope once a month is not too much for you guys, and it's probably not too much for me either.
And with that, we want you, community to drive topics. Help us, choose what we want to hear about next. And we have huge list. We want, MFTF was first because we released it recently, and we want community developers, start using it, and that's why we decided to start with it. There is tons of different topics we want to share. There is Anton with his architecture team want to share a lot of technical solutions. So, but we're looking for, I would say, what community want to hear from us, and having this regularly we can share, hang out together, talk, answer a question, and maybe somebody from community wants to talk about something as thanks as Alessandro did this time, participate in the project. So, yeah.
Cool. Great. There is also a survey. I'm just trying to post the link to it, but it doesn't seem to have worked. There's a survey. If you look at the YouTube description, there is a link to the survey there. I'll also post it on Slack. So that survey includes feedback on this Hangout, things we can do to improve it, and also, yeah, like Max was saying, future topics. So if there's anything you really, really want to hear about, or if you're involved with community engineering and there's something you want to talk about, feel free. You can reach out to me directly, and I will try and get that information in the next Hangout or one of the next Hangouts. Cool. Unless there are any more questions, well, yeah. Firstly, I'd like to say thanks for everyone to joining in. I'd also like to say happy birthday to community engineering, because it's 1 year as of the 1st. No cake though, or at least no one sent me any cake. So, sorry. Yeah, so thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to thank Tom for sharing. It was pretty cool to see all the new stuff coming on from testing. Thank you, Alessandro, as well.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining in, and tune in next time when we do this Hangout. See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.